Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and welcome to the Death to America Curse, the Jews, Who are the Houthis webinar co-hosted by the Combat Antisemitism Movement and the American Sephardi Federation. I would like to start by thanking Jason Guberman, the Executive Director of the American Sephardi Federation, for this collaboration who is helping putting together this very important event today. We are live on Zoom, Facebook, and during this webinar, all those that are watching us are able to send questions in the chat right now on Zoom. And at the end of the webinar, we're going to be able to ask the speakers of today to answer any of your questions. So thank you for all those that are taking the time to watch this webinar as well, in addition to those that are going to speak and will be introduced very soon. Today, we are bringing to you a very important topic which you may heard on the news, the war in Yemen. The conflict is orchestrated by the anti-Semitic organization called the Houthis, which is its own ideology is founded on hatred against the Western world and the Jewish people. We realize that there is a great lack of knowledge and information about the Houthis around the world. So we decided today to host this important event to shed light on this terrorist organization. The Houthis are an important proxy of the Iranian regime. Together with Hamas, Hezbollah, and other organizations, they spread hatred and anti-Americanism around the world and is asked to stop. With anti-Semitism on the rise globally, a group like the Houthis is a threat to our democracy. And last week we saw how a terrorist organization took over a country, took over its own population hostage in Afghanistan. And we can't let this happen again, and this time in Yemen. Before we start, I would like to thank all the speakers of today who take the time to share with us their expertise on the subject. For the introduction of the issue of today and the speaker, I would like to invite Leo Lowy, who does an internship summer work with the Combat Antisemitism Movement and did an extensive research on the Houthis and their anti-Semitism nature. So please, Leo, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sasha. So I'm honored to have with me the leading experts on the matter to share the knowledge about the extremist Shia group. Please welcome Professor Paul Fenton, co-director of the Department of Arabic and Hebrew Studies at the Université Paris-Sorbonne. Professor Norman Steinman, the Schusterman Josie Chair Emeritus of Judaic History and founding director of the Center of Judaic and Israel Studies at the University of Oklahoma. Rabbi Eli Abadi, Senior Rabbi of the Jewish Council of the Emirates, Rabbi of Association of Gulf Jewish Communities, and Chair of the ASF's Council of Sephardic Sages, who will join us in a minute. Dr. Arwa Al-Katabi, President of the Broken Chair Organization for Mine Victims in Yemen. Salem Bafi, author of the familiar but distinct Understanding the Houthi Ideology and its Consequence on Yemen, and political officer at Yemen Embassy in Washington, D.C., and Mr. Jason Guberman, Executive Director of the American Sephardi Federation. Thank you all for being with us today. In 2014, this little-known Iranian regime proxy group took control of Yemen's capital Sanaa during the course of the ongoing and bloody civil war in Yemen. The Houthis' official slogan is Allah is greater, death to America, death to Israel, curse on the Jews, victory to Islam, showing that Jew hatred is at the core of the group's ideology. During Passover this year, the Houthis expelled from Yemen some of the country's last remaining Jewish citizens. They currently hold on of the very few Yemenite Jews left in the country, Levi Salem Mahrabi, having illegally imprisoned and tortured him for the alleged crime of helping a Jewish family flee the country with one of the community's historic Torah scrolls. All of us are working tirelessly to raise awareness about his case and the plight of the remaining Yemenite Jews. Rescuing Levi is a matter of urgency. So, without further ado, I would like to start with the first speaker, Professor Paul Fenton.
Hello there, good afternoon or good morning to everybody. First of all, many thanks for having invited me to participate in this forum about a very, very important event in modern history.
Thank you, Mr. Fenton. In order to understand today's situation in Yemen, we ought to acknowledge its historical background. Would you please give us an overview on the history of the region, the population, and of the conflict between the Shia and Sunnite as part of the tribal society in Yemen?
Okay, that's a very difficult task in so few minutes. While it is true that the Houthis really hit the headlines in 2014 when they took over Sanaa, as you mentioned, and deposed the President Ali Abdullah Saleh, but in fact, they are deeply rooted in not only in Yemenite history, but also in the history of Islam. And without some knowledge of this background, which goes back over 1,000 years, one cannot understand what they represent and what they are aiming for. A few words about the Yemen. It is geographically situated south of Saudi Arabia, the major representative of Sunni Islam in the world today. It is bordered by the Persian Gulf and the sea. To the west, to the east of the Yemen, you have the Emirates, who are mainly Sunni, and beyond you have, of course, the largest Shiite power on the globe, Iran. So Yemen is, as it were, squeezed between these two Sunni and Shiite superpowers. For those who are not really conscious of the difference between these two brands, the major brands, major tendencies of Islam, perhaps a few words will be apt to explain. One could, I suppose, compare the rift between Sunnite Islam, which we call Orthodox Islam, and Shiite Islam, as the rift between, in Christianity, although mutatis mutandi, it's not entirely comparable, between Protestantism and Catholicism, who have waged war in the past between each other for many, many centuries. I would think it's more apt to compare the differences between Catholicism and Orthodox Eastern Christianity, but that's, to expose that would mean going into too much detail. The Yemen itself is a country which covers something like 530,000 square kilometers, which in terms of European history is comparable to the size of France, modern France. It is quite a fertile land in parts, although there are desert areas, which explains why they have only 25 million as opposed to the 60, 70 million in France. And roughly the overall population is divided between the majority of Sunnite Muslims, who number about 65% of the population, and 35% are constituted by the Shiite minority. Having said that, the minority in the special branch of Shiite Islam known as the Zaydis, about which I will speak later on, they have governed nonetheless for over the past 1,000 years, since the 8th, 9th century until 1962. Most of Yemen was, in periods of foreign occupation under the Ottomans, under the English, but the reign over Yemen has mainly been in the hands of this minority of Zaydi Shiite Muslims. Besides Shiites and Sunnites, there is an infinitesimal minority, the minority groups which do not constitute more than 1% of the overall population, in which you can find Christians and Hindus, who are latecomers to the Yemen, and of course Jews, who can trace back their history in the country for more than 2 millennia, which means that they were there miles and miles, years and years before the rise of Islam and before the Yemen became Islamic. I think that's a point that is important to remember. And in addition to which, one can add that the Yemenite Jews in some way contributed, according to the biography of Muhammad, the founder of Islam. Many of the Jews who were his informers came from the Yemen. So there is a long connection between Yemenite Jews and Islam. Now, let us concentrate on the Houthis, who are and who claim to be the advocates of the Zaydi form of Islam, which is one of the oldest branches of the Shia movement. As I said, they go back a long way, insofar as they are followers of Zayd bin Ali. Zayd bin Ali, who lived from 695 to 740. I guess that is.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. We have like 1 minute left.
Okay. We can add to that Zayd bin Ali was one of the first revolutionaries. He rose up against the Umayyad Caliphate on the grounds that the latter were unjust, allegedly unjust and corrupt rulers. So this is a second important point, that the Zaydis, who are synonymous with the Houthis are a tribe who belong to the Zaydi confession. They were one of the first revolutionaries of Islam, and so therefore their uprising and their revolution against the mainstay Islam is something which is very old. I just wanted to add that they believe that the legitimate leaders of Islam should be of the Fatimid descent, i.e. the descendants of Ali, who has the primate according to Shiite Islam in relation to Muhammad, who's a secondary figure. And lastly, I think one should add something about the relationship between the Zaydis, the Shiites, and Jews, that I think can be said that historically, I know that this will be dealt with in great detail further on, but I think it's correct to say that the status of Jews under Shiites was the worst ever in relation to all other parts of the Muslim world, in that Jews were considered as unclean beings. They were not to touch Muslims, and if Jews touched food, then this food was considered unfit for consumption. One of the other restrictions that was imposed upon them, which I think was particularly cruel, was the decree known as the Orphans Decree, that in an age where mortality at a young age was something which was widespread in the Yemen, there were hundreds and perhaps thousands of Jewish orphans across the ages. And according to the Zaydi Shiite interpretation of the law, which by the way was founded by Zayd bin Ali, who besides being a political leader was also a very learned religious scholar, he claims that since the Jews should have been Muslims anyway, that an orphaned Jew or Jewess should automatically be converted to Islam. And although there was a lull in the enforcement of this cruel law during the Ottoman period, it was reinforced under the Imam Yahya and lasted until 1948, when most of the Jews, who then numbered something like 50,000, came on Aliyah to Israel.
Thank you very much, Professor Fenton, for your expertise. Please stay with us as we are moving forward to our next speaker, Professor Norman Steinman. So Professor Steinman, Please give us a historical overview about the Houthi movement, focusing on the connection with Iran, the support they receive from the Ayatollah regime, and why it is so important for Iran to have a third-party organization in Yemen to fight for the agenda. Professor Stillman, you're mute. You on mute? Yeah, better.
Yes, a tall order. All right, and thank you to my esteemed colleague, Professor Fenton, for the broad historical background on which our stage is set, and on which the so-called Houthi movement, we can see, has wrought the damage that it has. I say, by the way, so-called Houthi movement, because the official name of the group is Ansar Allah, the helpers or partisans of God. And the designation Ansar harkens back to those who supported the Prophet Muhammad when he came from Mecca to Medina and established the Muslim polity, the Ummah, in 622. The Ansar Allah are popularly called Houthis because, as it has been noted, they emerged primarily from the Houthi tribe in northern Yemen, and its founders and leaders, Hussein Badr ad-Din and Abd al-Malik, bore the nisbah, the name designation al-Houthi, and most of the members, but not all, are from this tribe, and equally so, not all Houthis belong to the Ansar Allah, but certainly overwhelmingly yes. The Ansar Allah are an armed militant Islamist movement of the Zaydi Shia, as Professor Fenton has pointed out, that emerged in the 1990s in Sanaa in northern Yemen, which, by the way, was the original Zaydi capital established by the Imam al-Hadi al-Haq in the late 9th century, and who was the founder of the dynasty that ruled until 1962, as already has been pointed out. Sanaa became the center of Zaydi learning, and I would hasten to add, it also was a center of Jewish scholarship at around the same time, and probably developed by Jews who followed the Zaydis to Yemen from Iraq and Persia. And what is noteworthy is that Zaydi Sanaa, absolutely true what Professor Fenton has said, that certainly the treatment of Jews in Yemen overall was, and certain other countries as well, was the harshest enforcement of the laws concerning non-Muslims. But one of the things that's interesting is that Jews always did best and worst under sectarian Muslims. And the same groups could equally ignore when it suited them, or when the imam felt it was permissible, the very restrictions. And one of the things that, for example, we see in Sanaa was that Jewish houses could be built as high as Muslim homes. Jewish men were permitted to wear the ornamental curved dagger, the jambiya, again, things that are strictly forbidden by the Omar, the Pact of Omar, and that David Carasso, a Sephardi merchant from Salonika, who spent the second half of the 1870s in Yemen, dubbed the Saadi Jews as, quote, warrior Jews. And he took special note of what he called the good relationship prevailing between them and the Arabs there. Now, thus, it's all the more sadly ironic that the Houthi movement has gone, and by the way, other Zaydi imams, as he rightly pointed out, with the orphans decree and so on. One of the in the 12th century, one of the Zaydi imams burned down all the synagogues in Sanaa because Jews sold alcohol to Muslims. but that the region gave birth to this militant Islamist and blatantly anti-Semitic movement. And I say blatantly anti-Semitic because the shi'ar, the watchword, the slogan, the battle cry of the movement, which Lior Lowy has already quoted for us, has God is great or greater, death to America, death to Israel, a curse upon the Jews, and the victory of Islam. And with that kind of inimical slogan, it's no wonder that the Ansar Allah would harass and pillage and persecute the Jews in the northern provinces of Saada and Amran, where there were still several hundred Jews when the movement came into existence. And some of the Jews from the region, in fact, fled the 250 kilometers southward to the capital of Sanaa, settling mainly in the Medina Siyaha neighborhood, which had literally the city for the travelers or tourists. But because it had foreigners there, they felt safer there and were under the protection of the central government until they were caught up in the violence of the takeover of Sanaa in 2014. But even before the takeover, there were anti-Jewish incidents in Sanaa and elsewhere. For example, a Jew was stabbed to death in the souk in front of his children in 2012, before the Houthis even get there. In 2015, Jews were beaten in the old city of Sanaa. And I would just mention here that the Jews who did remain in the north even afterwards, and there were about 100 individuals at the time, were secretly evacuated by the US State Department in 2009. And all of those who came to the States were granted refugee status. Now, for public consumption, Houthi spokesmen deny that the violence against Jews has been perpetrated by Houthis. Fadl Abu Talib stated that the movement is against Zionism, and then I quote, "But Jews have nothing to fear," unquote. However, Jews did indeed fear them, and said that the violence and destruction of property was clearly committed by them. And their fear was given the clear declaration enmity in the battle cry. By the way, the slogan is partially modeled after that of Khomeiniist Iran, which has Morg ba America and Morg ba Israel, death to America and death to Israel. And the Iranian Shiite inspiration is similar to that of Hezbollah. And in fact, the writings of both Hassan Nasrallah, the head of Hezbollah, and other Hezbollah figures were in circulation among the Houthis. And by the way, another Houthi spokesman and apologist, Ali al-Bukhaili, has said that these calls for death and cursing in the slogan shouldn't be taken literally. However, I would hasten to mention the oft employed principles of taqiyya and kitman, prudence and dissimulation, which allow Shiites to pretend things before non-Shiites for their own protection and for the good of their religious community. And not only has Iran's proxy, the Lebanese Hezbollah, provided ideological and moral support for the Ansar Allah, but Iran itself has been a supporter of the movement, especially since 2015, supplying weapons, technical know-how, and political capital. And the Houthi drones and missiles that attacked Saudi Arabia and earlier Aden were in fact of Iranian design. And
I have a question about that. How do you explain why is it so important for Iran to have that third-party organization in Yemen? Why Iran thinks it's so important to have the Houthis under their, like, as an ally?
Because Iran has a vision of encompassing the Middle East through the north via Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon, and through the south through the Arabian Peninsula, and particularly, of course, because of its objection to the Saudi monarchy, which is an ally of the United States. And remember that it was back in 1979 with the takeover of Mecca. These were Iranian pilgrims who mainly were the perpetrators of this. And in fact, the Iranians see the Houthis as not only their proxies against the Saudis, but of course later on against Israel as well. And it made it very clear that the missiles in Yemen can make it to Israel as well. And the Lebanese Hezbollah provided ideological and moral support, but Iran, as I said, has been since 2015 in particular, which was when the Saudis also were joining against the Houthis with the so-called central government, which was not very well, not very central. But they've been supplying all of these weapons, technical know-how, and money, and technicians. And despite Iranian and Houthi denials of this support, and again, I just remind you of Taqiyya and of Kitman, Iranian Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei openly declared his spiritual support for the movement in 2019. And several Iranian officials, apparently talking out of turn, mentioned military and material support in interviews on Iranian TV. And then sometimes they had to either backtrack, or someone said they really weren't talking officially. In any case, there are so few Jews remaining in Yemen today. There are few enough for maybe 50 or a little more for the Ansar Allah to persecute. And recently, a few of the families have come to the United Arab Emirates, and of course, I understand that Rabbi Abadi will be addressing that very subject shortly.
Hopefully. Thank you very much, Professor Stillman. We're gonna now pass to Dr. Al-Katabi, which I would like to know, as a Yemeni intellectual, how do you describe the Houthis' ideology towards the Jews? Professor Al-Katabi, you're on mute. We cannot hear you.
Unmute.
Okay. Hello. I am happy to be with you, ladies and gentlemen. I hope to, I tried to send my presentation, but I don't know if they received it or not. I hope they received it. Did you receive it?
No.
No. Unfortunately, the internet is not good with me. Unfortunately, I was also hesitated to participate in this very important event because my family are in Yemen, and Houthi, they are aggressive against people who are in Yemen. But then I convinced to be with you and to be a little bit encouraged and talk about this movement. Unfortunately, this movement started in the early time in after the revolution of Yemen, 1962. You know, my doctorate, it was about the financial policies of the Yemeni imams from 1918 to 1962, and it is related to Houthi because they are belong to the same clan in Yemen, which came to Yemen in the 9th century of Hijri century. As the professor has the historical background given to this about the Houthi, I will try to concentrate about the anti-Semitism of the Houthi against not just the Jewish, but also other people as the American and other Christian people. Do you know the slogan was invented in the 1959 in Sanaa, and it was invented by a small group of the Houthis, but they called them Al-Shabab Al-Mu'min. The president or the boss of this this military this group, it was very small group. And the Shabab al-Mu'min was supported by Houthi, and even the government supported this group. The government wanted this group to balance the situation in Yemen between the Muslim Brotherhood, who are presented by Al-Islah, or the التجمع اليمني للإصلاح, who are the Sunni believer. Do you know Yemen is historically are Sunni and Zaydi, Shafi'is and Zaydis. But Muslim Brotherhood, they came to the community later on in the 14th of 20th century, and started to separate other ideology in Yemen, and that's why they came after the revolution of 1962. They tried to not to marginalize the Zaydis, but to find another ideology in Yemen, which was the Sunnis. They have the background of the Muslim Brotherhood. I will here to shed light on the immigration, because in 1984, and it was there were in Yemen around 50,000 Jews in Yemen, and they were an essential part of the Yemeni community. But unfortunately, we lost them from then after after 1915, in which called the magic carpet. In this immigration time, around 50,000 Yemeni Jews were immigrated to Israel, and there was just a small community in Yemen, around 370 Jews, who was separated in many places, either in South or in North Yemen. But this small community was flattered to another place, to Israel. And I have written a schedule, for example, in 2003, there were just 370 Jews in Yemen who were represented around 43 families. In 2009, 10 members of the Jewish community left Yemen, and in 2013, 20 persons left Yemen. in 2016 and 2020 and 2021, around all the rest of the Jewish community left Yemen, and there is still just 5 people in Yemen. Just 5 people. Most of them are elderly, and they prefer not to stay in Yemen, not to go out Yemen. They prefer to stay in Yemen, not to go outside Yemen. Now I have to talk a little bit about the aggressive actions against the Yemeni Jews in Yemen by Houthis. This began to 1959 when they started to be together, this Hashemite clan to be together, and they started to hate the Jews in Yemen and to deliver very harassment words against them. They write a malzama. A malzama is a notebook of the Houthi, Hussein Badr al-Din al-Houthi, who established this organization. He wrote or taught a lecture about the Jewish, and wrote after that there were malzama. One of them it was against Jewish, and he talked about them very aggressively, and then there were just one Jewish tribe in Saada, who's Bani Salem, and they had to evacuate to Sanaa, and as the professor said, and then one of them was killed in Sanaa, who was Harun Zindani in 2012. The problem was stronger after that, because Houthi and his slogan, it was really hatred and very bad. This slogan was taken from Iranian. When we say that this slogan, it was death to America and death to God the Greater, and death to America, death to Israel, and cross to Jewish, and victory for Islam. When we see this slogan, it's just like the slogan of Iranian, and when we see even the colors themselves, just the colors in the Iranian flag. So they take it from Iran, and they try to separate it in Yemen. They say this. They painted this slogan everywhere in Yemen, not in specific places, but they separated everywhere. They write it, they painted in the buildings, even in the historical buildings such as Sanaa cities. Unfortunately, I presented this in my PowerPoint, but unfortunately I cannot show you, because old city, it was polluted with this bad slogan. It is in the schools, in the markets, in the all over the world. In Sanaa, they polluted everywhere. And when anyone want to omit or to this slogan, they sometimes they killed them when want to make something for this to omit this slogan. This slogan was a part of the Houthi movement, and they put it even in their cars, in their celebration. There are a lot of demonstrations by Houthis, and use this slogan in their ceremonies, in their celebrations, in the whatever they have for celebrations or actions, they put this slogan everywhere. And the most important thing, not just the slogan, is the scream. They have their scream, and this scream is very loud, and people should say or call for screaming for the slogan everywhere and every day. Even in Sanaa, even in Jum'ah pray, they scream it loudly with their hand. They raise their hand and scream loudly about this slogan. There was many events. They killed people. I thought in one of their event, it was an Eid. It was Eid al-Adha in one city of Yemen, and a group of people, they refused to scream Allah Bruce, or Allah the greatest, death to America, and so on. And they said, we will not scream with this slogan, and the Houthis killed them directly. It was in the holy day, and it was in the celebration of the feast of Al-Adha. They use this scream also in the schools, and this is the biggest dangerous thing. This scream, they enforce children in all schools every morning to scream this slogan before they go to their classes. And this scream, it will be a part of their education system, and it is really bad for the future of Yemen and of the children in Yemen, and it will also affect the relationship with Yemenis, with other people in the world, with the Jews, with the American, with other people. Unfortunately, they use this scream and slogan, which is really anti-Semitism, and no one criticizes Houthi in the international community. We tried in Geneva last year to attract attention, the international community in Geneva, about this slogan and scream, but no one, no one help us to put this organization as a terrorist group. We talked to German people. I talked with a lot of people in the Geneva, in the international community of but they ignore, they don't care, even though Houthi presented this hatred slogan and this hatred and aggressive action against other people, other Jews, other American, other Christian people. I don't know why, but we need help to bring this to the light, and to support us to put Houthi again in the list of the terrorist organization. Thank you very much, and I am sorry because I don't speak English for a long time. That's why maybe my English is not so perfect, but I try to present what I can do. Thank you very much for attention, and we will be together in protect people everywhere. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Al-Katabi. It was very, very interesting. Your English was on point, so no worries about that. And I would like to applaud your courage for speaking with us today and for standing up against the Houthis. So thank you very much for your intervention today. So yeah,
Thank you.
Welcome, Rabbi Abadi. Thank you for being with us today. Yeah, so let's dive right in. I would like to ask you about last Passover, when the Houthis expelled from Yemen some of the country's last remaining Jewish citizen. By contrast, before and after the Abraham Accords, the United Arab Emirates reunited the Yemenite Jewish family. And I understand that as a senior rabbi of the Jewish Council of the Emirates, you were involved in the operation to rescue and reunite the Yemenite Jews in Abu Dhabi. So could you tell us more about that, please?
Yes, thank you very much. And it's a pleasure and honor to be part of this distinguished and illustrious panel. Thank you. As you know, from the Abraham Accord, the past year has seen a great change in not just in the Jewish community in the UAE, but I think in the Jewish presence in the entire Gulf, and of course the relationship with Israel, living in the UAE, in Dubai, I've seen changes on a day-to-day basis. The way we are welcomed, the way we are treated, the way we are received, and of course the presence of an active Jewish community, kosher food, and things like that. I think part of the ethos of the UAE has been to basically live and let live. In a sense, to practice what's called tolerance, coexistence. And even though that philosophy has been from the beginning of Sheikh Zayed's leadership, may he rest in peace, leadership in the UAE, of course, that has been put into practice in the last several years, and specifically in this past year with Israel. But we know very well that there were contacts, relations between Israel and the UAE before the Accords in many different areas of national interest for both countries. And this Abraham Accord, as it was said by the foreign minister, is not a peace treaty because the UAE and Israel have never been at war, but it's a normalization process, normalization treaty, where it is normal for two countries that live in the same region that have similar interests to have diplomatic relations and cooperations in many areas of national interest and also in many areas of human endeavors. And we have seen these MOUs in the last year signed by government officials, by private businesses, by social NGOs and things like that of both countries. There were two occasions in which the UAE government helped Jews escape Yemen, and they were brought to safety, and they now living peacefully, tranquilly in Abu Dhabi. My personal involvement was when one of their relatives that lives in London approached me and asked me if I can do something for his family that is trapped in Yemen, and if the UAE government can do something about it. I took all that information, their names, their location, and things like that, and I contacted the person in the UAE government that I was directed to, who would be responsible in a sense to make that a reality. And I was informed, he took all that information and he told me, let me see what we can do. I'll let you know in a few days if we're going to take that mission or not, and if we have the ability to do so. And lo and behold, 2-3 days later, I received a phone call from him telling me that we are going to take that mission, and please maintain complete silence and confidentiality until they're safe and sound in a third country or somewhere that we can announce it. And indeed, it took maybe 10 days, after which I was informed that they are safe and sound in Abu Dhabi. And now we could go public, so to speak, and indeed we did so. I visited them. The government in Abu Dhabi is giving them lodging, expenses, food. They're really very well taken care of, to the point that they don't seem to want to go anywhere else. They're happy staying there. I suggested to them either to make an aliyah, to go to Israel, or to go to the US, or to go to the UK where they have relatives. And for now, they seem to be happy where they are. And so, look, this was not a quid pro quo, so to speak. It will bring you as long as you go somewhere else. No. So the government in Abu Dhabi is generous enough to not just let them stay, but make sure that their stay is comfortable and they feel welcome. They make minyanim. I lend them a Sefer Torah to pray, to have their services. One of them is a shochet, so he himself can take care of the chickens that they want to eat, and so they have practically all what they need. And of course, they have the freedom to travel anywhere they want, but so far they have chosen to stay there. And I'm in constant touch with them, provide them with any spiritual and social needs that they have. And we have been practically the government and the Jewish community helping in that endeavor.
Okay, thank you so much. I have a question about Levi Mahrabi. So we mentioned it before that the rebel group is holding captive one of the remaining Yemenite Jews. So Levi Mahrabi was arrested for the supposed crime of helping a Jewish family flee abroad and bring a Torah scroll with them. So could you please give more information about this unacceptable and illegal imprisoning of Levi Mahrabi?
Well, we know that the imprisonment is illegal. The courts have already said so. There is no reason to have him in prison and to torture him, especially now that we know that he is not in a best health. The agreement that the Houthis made, that if the rest of the Jews would leave, that they would let him go, it was violated. But I don't think we could expect anything better from them. I mean, we have seen these terrorist groups all over the Middle East. You cannot take them at their word. You cannot believe any agreement that they sign or they shake hands on. I mean, like we have been seeing it for decades. I mean, look at Iran itself, claims to be keeping the JCPOA, and we know that they're not. And even before President Trump exited the agreement, even before they continued, they have clandestine places for the manufacturing of the uranium and enriching uranium, all of those things. You're dealing with people, with groups and organizations that attempt to lie as a modus operandi. That's how they are, and that's how they live, and that's how they survive, and that's how they win battles. Unfortunately, we in the West, well, you in the West, I must say now, I'm in the East, but people in the West, the Western liberal democracies, they take them at their word as though they're making agreements between the US and UK and US and France. And we take those countries at their agreement, at their words that they sign. We're dealing with terrorist groups. We're dealing with people that part of their modus operandi and vivendi is to lie. And that's how they do things. And we can't expect anything, but we need to demand. We need to alert the international community, to put pressure, because those groups, although not like any other country and Western liberal country where pressure can help, here you need a lot of pressure for it to help, and a pressure that includes financial pressure, not to give them financial incentive, but to prevent them from getting any financial incentives or any help. Pressures like this, that definitely might help. But to take them at the word that they made an agreement, that they signed, it's as we say in rabbinic literature, it's a beracha levatala. It's a blessing in vain, so to speak. It's we would be kidding ourselves into believing that they're gonna keep their word.
Okay, thank you very, very much, Rabbi Abadi, for sharing these inspiring stories of interfaith partnership in the Gulf region, and also for helping us raise awareness about the plight of Levi Mahrabi. So I would like to welcome now Mr. Jason Guberman, the Executive Director of the American Sephardi Federation, who will now shed light more in depth about Mahrabi situation. So as you mentioned before, Levi Mahrabi remains illegally imprisoned by the Houthis since 2016. So could you please tell us what is his situation right now? How did that happen? And what is the West doing to free him in practice?
Thank you, Lior. The situation right now is quite dire. 2 years ago, last month, even a Houthi-controlled court in Sanaa ordered, as Rabbi Abadi had said, for Levi to be released. And interestingly, it said, as the other defendants who had been released years earlier. Instead, he remains in jail because he is a Jew. Levi's only 34 years old, but he has purportedly been partially paralyzed by a stroke, and he's lost all of his teeth. We are grateful for the support of the U.S. State Department in calling for Levi's release, but that is not enough. When Nantan Sharansky was illegally imprisoned by the Soviet Union, the U.S. government made it a policy that at every meeting with the Soviets, no matter what the topic, they asked about Sharansky, and they asked about other prisoners of conscience in the Soviet Union. We need to call for Mahrabi to be mentioned at every meeting with the Houthis, as well as in the negotiations with the Iranian regime, who Special Envoy Linder King has said is supporting the Houthis with quite significant and lethal weaponry.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. And yeah, sorry. So we know that the plight of Yemenite Jews is too often overlooked and ignored, as we said before. So what can we and the audience do right now to advocate for his release?
Yes. Middle Eastern North African Jewish refugees are frequently called the forgotten refugees of the last century. Hacham Abadi is one of them. He was born in Lebanon to Syrian Sephardic refugees who then had to flee to Mexico, where he grew up. The remaining Yemenite Jews are the forgotten refugees being forgotten in real time, in our time. Where was the outcry when most of Yemen's last Jews were expelled to Egypt during Passover? The irony of the timing being lost on the Houthis, but not on the Yemenite Jews who loved Yemen and had no desire to leave. Where were those who claimed to stand for marginalized people, human rights, and to chant Yemen can't wait when this was happening? The Khomeiniist Iranian regime-backed Houthis are exploiting international sympathy, and we can't allow them to get away with it because they're the ones perpetuating Yemen's humanitarian crisis and perpetrating mass atrocities such as bombing mosques during prayer and to inflict maximum casualties and burning hundreds of African migrants alive. The ASF, as the representative of the Yemenite Jewish community in the Conference of Presidents of major American Jewish organizations and the World Jewish Congress, has mobilized with the Combat Anti-Semitism movement on the Free Levi campaign, where we're both advocating for Levi's immediate release, as well as to help people, including with this event, to understand Houthi ideology, which is indoctrinating children, perhaps 600,000 children this summer in camps, to hate Americans, fellow Muslims, women, Jews, Baha'is, and other minorities. It is a truism that Holocaust comparisons are frequent, and they are frequently wrong. But when Zig-heiling Houthis practice the anti-Semitism they preach, when they persecute and ethnically cleanse Yemen's last Jews and commit other mass atrocities, Nazism ceases to be an analogy. Our viewers should go to freelevy.org to sign the petition that CAM and ASF have put together and which is going to world leaders, as well as visit freelevymarhabi.org to learn more about what they can do to help in this campaign.
Thank you so much, Mr. Guberman. Our next guest is Mr. Salem Bafi. He's in Yemen right now, so he can unfortunately not join us live today. However, he had the kindness to send us a pre-recorded message.
Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to start by thanking the Combat Anti-Semitism Movement and the American Sephardi Federation. This past year, I published an extensive report on the Houthi ideology and its lasting consequences on Yemen. I closely examined the Houthis physical, Hussein Badr al-Houthi physical, which is a set of documents and publications that act as a guiding doctrine for the rebels and its followers. I analyzed the Houthis' close relations with Iranian regime and the axis of resistance, and how their doctrines praises Iran, how their doctrines praise Iran and Hezbollah for their anti-Americans, anti-Jews ideology. I encourage you to read it. What I discovered most caused great alarm. The Houthi ideology does not preach peace. The Houthi ideology does not teach inclusivity or to embrace diversity. Instead, it braces hate for the most marginalized groups, including women, children, Jewish and Baha'i community. The Houthis are distinct to Yemen, but their teachings, doctrine, and actions are like many other terrorist organizations. Houthi leaders believe in the idea of divine selection. They believe that they are the one true group that's selected by God to rule and lead in Yemen. This belief derives from their misinterpretation of Quran and their desire to advance their own political ambition. The Houthi leadership and their teachings promote and preach the use of violent jihad in their struggle against the Jews, Americans, and Yemenis who believe that they are wish to destroy the Islamic societies. Al-Houthi and his followers praise Osama bin Laden for his violent resistance against the West. One of the most alarming aspects of the Houthis' extremist agenda is their deep focus on the radicalization, re-education, and the indoctrination of the Yemeni youth. Since it is a democratic coup in the capital, the Houthis have recruited and coerced more than 70,000 children under the age of 18 to attend radicalization camps in hope of sending them to front lines. In 2020 alone, nearly 1,400 children under the age of 18, under the age of 15, were killed in the Houthi front lines. This is according and documented. This is documented by the Houthis' major channel or main channel, Al Masira. The Houthis have drastically changed the school curriculum in order to radicalize the Yemeni youth. From first grade to sixth grade, the Yemeni youth are bombarded with extremist ideology and anti-American, anti-Jewish materials. For example, textbooks feature images of the Israeli flag under the boot of fictitious jihadists. The national education, Holy Quran classes teach aggression, hatred, resistance against what they call the American Jewish coalition. Even in the homework assignments call for students to depict their victory against what they call the American Jewish coalition. There are just a few examples of the Houthis' efforts to sow division, teach hatred and discrimination against religious and ethnic minorities, and fundamentally to reshape the future of Yemen. Religious minorities have been a direct target for the Houthis' hatred and violence. And the Houthi doctrine sends one clear message, that the Jewish community are the enemy of Yemen. The Houthi continue to arrest and assault the Yemeni Jews, force them to sell their homes, seize their properties. Ladies and gentlemen, this does not cover the full scope of the Houthi extremist ideology and their threat in Yemen and for the world. The Houthis regularly imprison and target the journalists. They deny several fundamental rights and freedom for children and women, among many other human rights violations. But gatherings such as this one we have today are now more important than ever. It's provided us with the opportunity to speak and to gain better understanding of the Houthi threat. By working together, hand in hand, through all available channels, religious, political, we can comprehensively challenge, confront, and combat the Houthi extremist ideology and their wish to spread it in Yemen. This is what our legitimate government is doing every day with our partner around the world. They are working with our partner around the world to ensure that the Houthis can never achieve their extremist goals. Thank you for your time and allowing me to speak today.
Thank you, Mr. Bafi, for your courageous and important work and for joining us today. So we have a few minutes left. So if one of you, the speakers, want to add something, it's now the time to do so. So just unmute yourself and go ahead.
Maybe I want to add something. I want to thank all of the panelists of this very important event because really this issue was ignored for a long time, and even from the international national community. Last year, I had an event here in Berlin with the Diakoni. And Diakoni is one of the most important organization in Berlin. And I talked about the Jews and Baha'i in Yemen under the Houthi control. And most of the audience said, we don't know. We don't have any information. Yemen is closed. There is no one talk about Yemen and the situation in Yemen, including the minorities in Yemen, including Jews and Baha'is. And I tried to shed light about the situation and of these minorities in Yemen. And do you know, but really the international community don't know what is really happening in Yemen. That's why it's important to work together. Otherwise, we cannot do anything for Jews and other people. Most of them, they are not in Yemen anymore, just 5 people. But even this Levi Mahrabi, he is in critical situation. I met 2020. I met Baha'i community in Geneva. I met 2 brothers of the Baha'i, Sakaf brothers, Nadim al-Sakaf and his brother Nader, and one of them was imprisoned with Mahrabi in the prison, and they tortured him very badly, and he cannot move anymore. So to release him, we should work together. We should put the international community under pressure. Do you know when Trump put the Houthi organization in the list of the terrorist organization, Houthi was very had something to put him under pressure, and they try to change their actions, not actions toward Yemeni people, ordinary people, and toward other people. But after 1 week, when the Biden came to the position, he left Houthi from the list of terrorist organization. They become very aggressive against all people, including the rest of the minorities, especially women. Do you know what is happening for women in Yemen? No one knows. The women lost their life as well, and not just Jews and Baha'is, but the Muslim women. They torture them, they rape them, they do a lot of horrible things against them. So I hope this even today is the first step to try to prevent Houthi from his aggressive actions toward people. Thank you very much indeed, and I'm sorry for I am a little bit long.
Thank you very much. Does anyone else want to add something before we close the webinar? No? Okay, so I would like to deeply thank you everyone for your participation today. And as history has shown us over and over again, terrorist organizations have the power to destabilize an entire region, and the Houthis are no exception. Their words are not just words. We experienced it with Al-Qaeda. We are witnessing it right now with Hamas in Gaza and Hezbollah in Lebanon and Afghanistan, where the Taliban are holding a whole civilian population hostage. The Houthis represent a real and direct threat to Yemen and the world, and we cannot allow the modern societies to make another mistake and have a terror organization dictate the rules. It's important for us to understand that when we fight anti-Semitism around the world, we fight groups with extreme ideologies before they became mainstream, like ISIS, who spread terror across the world before it was defeated. So let's keep fighting hate in all its form and acting toward a more peaceful world. So thank you again for everyone for joining us. I invite you to visit the Combat Antisemitism movement website, so combatantisemitism.org for more information. And the recording of the webinar will be on Facebook page, on our Facebook and on our website tomorrow. So feel free to visit the website. Thank you again, everyone.